Last time on Lightseed Radio, we opened the door. DMT, a molecule that turns your brain into a hyperconnected dream engine. Entity encounters reported by over 2,500 people, structured, repeating, real enough to change lives, and a laser, a red speckle pattern that, under the right conditions, snaps into code. Tonight, we're not just talking about it anymore, we're going deeper. So picture this. You're sitting in a room, the lights are low. On the wall in front of you, a red laser, just a collimated beam diffracted into a speckle pattern. Under normal conditions, it's just noise, blurry, red dots, random. But then something changes. You inhale. And within seconds, the dots lock. Lines form, sharp, clean, geometric, and then symbols. Rows of them. Like you're reading code printed on a beam of light. Not just you. Over 1,000 people have reported seeing the exact same thing. Same setup, same symbols, same impossible clarity. Welcome back to Lightseed Radio. This episode, we're not just asking, is this real? We're asking, why does the code look like the Matrix? Welcome back to Lightseed Radio. If you saw episode 2, you know the story. DMT, entities, the laser protocol, but that was just the overview, the introduction. Tonight, we're pulling the thread. Because when you dig into the data, 3 things become impossible to ignore. 1, the code people report seeing, it specifically looks like katakana, Japanese script. The same aesthetic the Matrix used in 1999. Cosmic coincidence, or is the brain just projecting movies back onto the wall? 2. The atheist conversion rate. 55% of participants identified as atheist or agnostic before their DMT experience. After, that number dropped to 26%. What are these people encountering that makes them rewrite their entire worldview? And 3, the neuroscience. What happens to a brain on DMT isn't just seeing things, it's a fundamental rewiring of how information flows. Tonight, we're breaking all 3 of those open. Let's go deeper. Let's start with the paper itself. Author Danny Goler published in IPI Letters, that's Interdisciplinary Psychedelic Information. That's really hard to say. It's not Nature, it's not the Lancet, but it's peer-reviewed, it's documented, and it has something most studies don't. Over 1,000 participants, all following the exact same protocol. So let's talk about the setup. The substance. Vaporized NN-DMT, approximately 1 gram cartridge concentration, low to medium dose. Not breakthrough territory, just enough to shift perception. The light, a 650 nanometer red laser, that's deep red, the kind you'd see in a presentation pointer. But here's the key, it's collimated and diffracted. That means the beam stays narrow, then passes through a diffraction grating to create a sparkle pattern on the wall. Under normal light, a sparkle pattern is just random noise, tiny bright and dark dots scattered across the surface. the phenomenon. Under the influence of DMT, the participants reported that the random dots align into coherent geometric structures and then into symbols. Not just any symbols, Katakana-like characters. That's Japanese script, one of the 3 writing systems used in Japan. And here's the part that makes this more than just pareidolia, seeing faces in clouds. The symbols are reported as stable, meaning when you move your head, they don't shift, they stay locked in place. And they're intersubjective, meaning multiple people in different sessions report seeing similar glyphs. Now, the paper itself is careful. It doesn't say this proves we live in a simulation. It says here's a reproducible phenomenon, here's the data, here's what participants report. And here's a quote from the study. Independent of the observer's frame of reference. That's the academic way of saying this isn't just your brain playing tricks with motion and blur. But let's be honest about what this paper doesn't do. It doesn't include EEG. It doesn't include fMRI. It doesn't have a control group staring at the laser sober. It's a pilot study, a documented observation, a starting point. But here's why it matters. It gives us a repeatable protocol. If this is real, other labs can test it. If it's not, other labs can debunk it. Either way, the conversation just got more concrete. Now let's talk about the part that might keep some people up at night. Not the laser, not the code, the people. In 2020, researcher Alan K. Davis published a survey. Over 2,500 people who had inhaled DMT and reported encountering an entity. Not just, I saw weird stuff, they met something, someone. And the survey asked, before your DMT experience, what was your religious or spiritual identity? 55% said atheist or agnostic, meaning over half of the participants didn't believe in anything beyond the material world. After the experience, that number dropped to 26%. Let that land for a second. More than half of the atheists who took DMT and met an entity came back believing in something more. Not because someone preached at them, not because they read a book, but because they met something that felt more real than everyday life. The survey data is specific. 81% said the encounter felt more real than everyday reality. 72% believed the entity continued to exist after the trip ended. 78% described the entity as benevolent. And here's the word that shows up over and over: guide. Not demon, not alien, not angel, guide. Like something older and wiser showing you how things actually work. Now, before some of you get nervous, I want to be very clear about something. I'm not here to break anyone's beliefs. If you're Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, atheist, that's your path, and of course I respect that. The point of this show isn't to tell you what to believe. It's to show you that there are alternatives. That thousands of people who didn't believe in anything, had an experience so profound that it rewrote their understanding of reality. That doesn't make them right, it doesn't make them wrong, it makes them data. And when 29% of people flip from nothing exists beyond matter to I met something real, that's not random noise, that's a pattern we need to take seriously. So the question becomes, what are they meeting? Let's look at the brain. 2023, Imperial College, London. Christopher Timmerman and his team did something no one had done before. They gave people IV DMT and then filmed their brain live. Not just EEG on the scalp, full fMRI, blood oxygen, deep brain activity. And what they saw is the key to everything. This is your brain. Normal, sober, resting state. See how it's organized? Distinct networks, separate regions. The visual cortex does vision, your language center does language, your memory systems do memory. Everything has a job, everything stays in its lane. Now, boom, DMT hits. The boundaries dissolve. Networks that normally don't talk to each other suddenly hyperconnected. Your visual cortex is flooding your language center. Your memory systems are talking to your emotional processing. Your sense of self, what neuroscientists call the default mode network, loses its structure. This isn't just a little more activity. This is a fundamental rewiring of how information moves through your brain. The researchers called it increased global connectivity. But here's what that actually means. Your brain stops being a system of specialists and becomes a single, unified information processor. Now think about what that means for the laser. You've got random red dots on a wall. Normally your visual cortex says random noise, meaningless. But now your visual cortex isn't working alone anymore. It's getting input from your language processing centers, from your pattern recognition systems, from your memory of every symbol you've ever seen. And all of that information is being projected onto the noise. Your brain is literally writing code onto the wall. This is a skeptic's best argument. And honestly, it's a really good argument, because if the hyperconnected brain can do this with a laser, what else is it generating that feels real but comes from inside? But here's the twist. Even if it's just your brain, why does everyone see the same shapes? Why katakana? Why not Arabic? Why not hieroglyphics? Why not random squiggles? And why does it look exactly like the Matrix? Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The Matrix 1999. The falling code, green characters on black, iconic. And if you look closely at those characters, they're katakana. Japanese script mixed with some Latin letters and numbers, but the base aesthetic, katakana. And now, 25 years later, people on DMT report seeing the exact same aesthetic. Clean geometric lines, rows of symbols, katakana-like glyphs. So here's the uncomfortable question. Is this a cosmic coincidence? Did the Wachowskis accidentally tap into some kind of universal source code language? Or is the hyperconnected brain just projecting the movies we've all watched back onto the wall? Think about it. More than likely you've seen The Matrix. It's part of the cultural operating system now. So when your brain goes hyperconnected and starts looking for structure in random noise, it reaches for the most iconic code imagery it knows. Katakana, matrix rain, source code. This is neuroscientist Andrew Gallimore's theory. He argues that our normal reality is a user interface, evolved for survival, not truth. And DMT, it switches a channel. It lets the brain build new worlds out of information that's normally filtered out. Under that lens, the code isn't out there. It's your brain showing you how it builds reality in the first place. But why is it stable? Why doesn't it shift when you move your head? Why do multiple people see similar glyphs? And here's the really uncomfortable part. What if both things are true? What if the brain is generating the symbols, but it's generating them because it's tuning into something real, like a radio that finally finds the right frequency? I don't have an answer to that. No one does, but I can tell you this. When 1,000 people see the same thing and it looks like the most famous movie about simulated reality, that's not something we get to ignore. So let's bring the threads together. You've got a brain that's hyperconnected, building worlds from noise. You've got symbols that look like the Matrix, and you've got entities. Remember, 81% of people said meeting the entity felt more real than everyday life, more real than real. Not it was trippy, not I was hallucinating, more real. So what's the relationship between the brain rewiring and the entity encounter? One possibility, the entity is the rewiring. Your brain becomes so hyperconnected that it generates a personification of the process. The guide is your own mind showing you how it works. Another possibility, The hyperconnected state lets you perceive something that's always there, like a radio that's been offline suddenly picking up a signal. The entity isn't generated, it's revealed. Both of those are testable, in theory. If it's just the brain, then we should be able to map exactly which networks create which parts of the encounter. If it's something external, then the experience should stay consistent even when you disrupt specific brain regions. But here's what we know right now. The experience changes people. 29% of atheists become believers. 78% describe the entity as benevolent. And the lasting effects? Less fear of death, more connection to others, a sense that reality is bigger than it looks. That's not random brain noise, that's transformation. Quick reality check before we close. While we're talking about code and entities, there's another conversation happening. Companies like Small Pharma, now part of Cybin, they've completed phase 2A trials for DMT in treatment-resistant depression. The results? Rapid, significant reduction in depression scores. Some patients maintaining benefits for weeks after just a single session. And the mechanism? The same hyperconnectivity we talked about. The brain in that state experiences what researchers call a neuroplasticity window, a brief period where rigid thought patterns can be broken and reformed. For someone stuck in depression, that's not mystical, that's therapeutic. So yes, this molecule does wild, impossible-sounding things, and yes, it might also help people who are suffering, but both things can be true. So where does that leave us? 1,000 people staring at a red laser, seeing code. The code looks like the Matrix. The brain is hyperconnected, building worlds for noise, and somewhere in that process, people meet something that changes their lives. Is it real? I don't know, but I can tell you what is real. The experience is real. The transformation is real. And the question, also, guess what, is real? Maybe the code is your brain showing you how it renders reality. Maybe it's a frequency we finally learned to tune into, or maybe, just maybe, it's both. Either way, when you turn off the laser and come back to this world, nothing looks quite the same. If this episode pulled a thread you didn't know was there, or you enjoyed the deeper dive, please hit subscribe, share it with someone who's been asking the same questions, and check the description. I'm linking every study, every paper, every piece of data we talked about, because Lightseed Radio isn't about telling you what to believe. It's about giving you the tools to ask better questions. This is Lightseed Radio, decoding the known and the unknown in a universe that might be stranger than the code we think we're reading.